You know, I was originally going to script this and try to make this more of like a grounded video. But that would insinuate that I am a professional. So, we are here today to do a story tier list for Limbus Company. Because, I mean, as you've seen recently, I recently just got caught up to Limbus Company. Meaning I've done basically all the story content. So I thought I would go over each and every part of the story and give you my personal opinion on each of these cantos to really wrap up the Limbus content until Kim Ji-hoon decides to drop an intervalo. Because you know he's going to do it. So here is the tier list right here. We got S tier, meaning that this is peak cinema. This is the best of the best. A tier, these are pretty good. You know, they may have a few flaws, but they're overall really solid pieces of content. There's the B tier. These are solid. Not great, not amazing, just pretty good. C tier. This I always consider as my mid tier. This is like, I don't really have much of an opinion, or I don't really care. And then there's the D tier. You have to suck major bumhole to get into the D tier. So I think without further ado, let's get us started with the prologue. Selva Oscura. Interesting story with this prologue. I think it was like, maybe 2 years ago? I tried getting into Limbus Company by the request of two of my friends, one of them being, Wargos. The funny little voice in my head that always accompanies me in like most of my Limbus recordings. I tried playing through Selva Oscura during that time, and I just could not get into the game. The main reason for this was because I was severely addicted to Dokkan Battle at the time. Which, to me, from like my small interaction with the game, the gameplay is just kinda felt the same. So because of that, I kind of stopped playing until sometime last year. I decided to give the game a second chance because I peaked in Dokkan and got bored because there was no content. And I remember playing through Selva Oscura, and I remember I still wasn't that big on the prologue. The prologue is primarily your introduction to the world and the story and an introduction to the characters, so I understand that there's not really a lot they could have done with Selva Oscura, especially since it is primarily a tutorial. But I don't know, I don't think it does a very good job at introducing you to the game, but I will say it did a decent job at least introducing some of the characters. It's fun to see the sinners going absolutely wild and just be completely and utterly mismanaged, you could say. So it makes sense that Dante kind of had to join up to sort these ruffians out. I think for me, this one's probably going to be a C tier. It's not great. There's no real reason to go back to it once you've played it, like, once. You're not missing much. Next up, The Outcast. The very first canto of the game. We're out of tutorial hell now. This is Gregor's canto, which, you may not know this, Gregor is actually my favourite sinner. I don't know why. I think Bug Arm is cool. I think he's a chill guy. He has funny Fire Fist that does the funny rah! And overall, I just think he's a really interesting character to divulge into. I feel like I give a lot of credit to Canto 1 because I actually did get into the game going through Canto 1. I was actually more engaged with the story. I cared a lot more about what was happening around the characters. And Gregor's is like a nice, simple canto to really start us off, because it talks about his time in the war, how it affected him, how G-Corp experimented on him and the soldiers, and what that led to, his coping with PTSD. It delves into a lot of stuff. And we also have Canto 1 to thank us for a very important lesson that will come to be learned through the rest of the cantos. Don't get attached to the side cast. We were introduced to Yuri in this canto. Yuri does not make it outside of this canto. This canto also sets up, N-Corp, They were first introduced here when they take the golden bow and it was a complete and utter failure. It really shows just how inexperienced Dante was with the rest of the sinners, and also just how the sinners, for the most part, just weren't that willing to cooperate with one another. I think for now, I'm gonna put the Outcast in a B tier. It's solid, but there are a few areas where it's like, it falls flat, but I can't fault it for it. You know, it was still trying to set up a lot of the characters, the general story elements. And I feel like you could also tell, like, Project Moon, for like the first couple of cantos, were really trying to find their footing. So, Canto 1 just kind of turns out to be a decent story, but nothing out of the ordinary. Okay, after Canto 1, we have The Unloving. I'm gonna be dead ass. I don't remember much about this canto. I think this canto tried to be a bit more light-hearted for the most part after the events of the Outcasts. You know, you have the funny scene, haha, Sinclair, maracas. I love Los Mariachis. They are so peak. This was also the canto where we got introduced to Effie and Saudi, which, you know, these two characters, they are recurring, and I do like them. They're pretty cool characters, but this canto just feels very forgettable. I might need to go and replay Canto 2 after this recording, because I barely remember much of what happened. I remember the goal of the sinners was to get into the casino and win some kind of big game using some sort of, like, talisman or something that changed the tide of their, like, gamble or something, so they're, like, guaranteed to win. And then we go into the vault and find out, like, oh, there's just a bunch of slaves in here, and, you know, it goes into how Rodion and how she's trying to forgive herself. I don't know. I feel like they really messed up trying to tell the Rodion portion of this story. It was not very well handled. The final fight in the canto was also just really bad. I don't like the Baba Yaga fight. It does just feel like a regular encounter with a turn limit that's so forgiving that I didn't even know it existed for the majority I played through the game. I'm gonna have to give Canto 2 a D tier. I don't think this is a good canto. It had some fun moments, but other than that, this canto just really dropped the ball. Now we're on to Canto 3, The Unconfronting, Sinclair's canto, featuring a branch of N-Corp, Nagel and Hammer. They hate prosthetics. Prosthetics are cringe. We do not vibe with you if you have prosthetics. Glory be to my flesh. They thinking about it, N-Corp is quite literally the opposite of Warhammer's tech priests. Tech priests hate their flesh. Nagel and Hammer hate metal. This one was really good. I feel like this is when Project Moon really started to nail some of their stories. You know, it goes in with Sinclair talking about, you know, his past. You know, it goes into Sinclair's trauma with, you know, his groomer girlfriend murdering his entire family right in front of him, on Christmas nonetheless. Naughty kids don't get presents anymore, they just get dead parents. You know, it goes into Sinclair's, like, unweariness to prosthetics because his family started getting a bunch of prosthetics. He was supposed to be getting prosthetics. You know, so it delves into a lot of that. How he was manipulated by Chroma. And it also delves into a very important character, Sinclair's totally platonic, not homosexual in any way, friend, Damien, who we still don't really know much about, to be honest. You know, he kind of just came in and one-tapped Chroma, and then told us to just go count sheep. But honestly, this canto was great. I really enjoyed this. You know, it's also the first canto where we got a Millie track, and it's a pretty good track. We also got some character building for some of the other characters as well, such as we found out that Mercil actually worked for N-Corp. You know, the people that we are actively against. And unfortunately, Saudi and Effie died. Okay, Effie just died. So, I think the Unconfronting's going in A. I think I'm noticing a theme here, where it's just A, B, C, D. Very, very funny. I love that. Okay, we've got our very first intervallo up. Hell's Chicken. This was fun. I enjoyed Hell's Chicken. It was a good, fun intervallo. You know, you had the scenes where, like, there was the cooking competition between the sinners. You had this. I think this was the first time we were properly going into, like, researching distortions. We also get introduced to Samjo in this intervallo, who would become a amazing diver, and also just a really cool character that transferred into the upcoming Kanto. This was a good transitional intervallo. We had to have our fun with KFC before we got into the depressing Kanto that is to follow. Overall, I think Hell's Chicken was really fun, just due to the shenanigans that happen in this Kanto, like Heathcliff getting a bonky on his head, which, I'm telling you, this was a precursor to his Heisho identity. I'm telling you, I'm not crazy, you're crazy. I think Hell's Chicken is a B tier. I don't think it's as good as The Outcast, but it is a fun intervallo, especially because of how depressing the Unconfronting was. Speaking of depressing, The Unchanging is up. This Kanto is very interesting, because I have seen people that love this Kanto, and I've seen people that hate this Kanto. I actually owe quite a bit to this Kanto because, you know, this was the Kanto I made my first Limbus video on. You know, I did the Spice Bush video, which I recorded because I was unironically expecting to get my ass beat. I did not. I am that good at the game, and I deserve back pats. But The Unchanging, let's get into it. So this is following Yi-sang, and it goes into Yi-sang's spiral of looking into the mirror of his own creation and seeing a perfected version of himself with wings that can fly into the heavens and a Yi-sang that is truly free. His name's Sang Yi, by the way, which I think is really funny. You know, it delves into a lot of Yi-sang's old friends as well from his group, the League of Nine, and how they went from this, like, nice, close, friendly group to now they're all just terrible people. I mean, Dongbake formed a terrorist organization to liberate technology. Dongrang kind of turned a blind eye to the K-Corp singularity whilst trying to use it for livestock reasons. He also did not get recognized by his cow, which hurt him so much he decided to distort. I think story-wise, The Unchanging is really good. I also think The Unchanging had one of the most unique dungeons, with all of the sinners basically having to play through the events that led to the League of Nine disbanding. But there's one core issue that this Kanto suffers from, and it's the gameplay. Oh my god, the gameplay for The Unchanging is miserable. The main reason for this is because The Unchanging has so many unnecessary filler fights. It is unbelievable. If I have to fight those crying K-Corp employees one more time, I'm going to blow a gasket. It was so bad, in fact, that Project Moon even pushed out an update to remove the vast majority of these fights for players to just experience the story. Which, while I think it's cool if you just care about the story of Limbus Company, it's not good if you're going to be playing this game for the longevity, because you're missing out on a lot of lunacy because of it. So, I think this is like a low B for me, because I think the story was great. It was a really good story, but it suffered pacing issues and an incredible amount of filler that just really dragged it down. This video is going to cause so many negative comments, I can already tell. C! This intervallo is cool. C was basically a intervallo that was built up to set up Kanto 5, where the LCB is going to go get Mephistopheles upgraded so that they can operate on the sea. Yep, we're turning a bus into a boat. The Limboat, as I believe Wargos would call it. But this also was amazing setup for Ishmael, because we're going to see. Ishmael kind of discovers my time is next, and she is freaking out because she doesn't believe that we're ready for this excursion, And I don't think she believes she's ready to do what she wants to do, which is to kill her captain. There was also some really good character building moments for C, you know. Yi Sang trying to make sure the group doesn't fall apart by engaging in activities. Heathcliff and Ishmael constantly being at each other's necks. Virgilius literally having to intervene because Ishmael is going off the walls, while the other sinners were just trying to gather parts for the boat. We also got, like, Olga and everything from Rowena that shows up here. So it is cool to see the library survivors show up during this. The battles weren't anything amazing, but this was more of like a story building intervalo. I think C, I'm going to put in B tier above the Outcasts. I think C was amazing. It also showed off the disparity between living in a wing compared to living in the back streets, because it has like that dome where it shows the people living in the wings like having a nice, beautiful, like clear beach, while we're just stuck on the average UK beach. The evil defining. I love this canto. I love the evil defining. I loved basically every second of this canto. Ishmael was already a sinner that I really enjoyed, so the evil defining was a breath of fresh air for me, because getting to see her story was so good. And there was a lot that happened in this as well. I mean, we had our fights with the twin hooks, which led to us meeting Pilot, that's his name. We met Pilot here, which, you know, he confirms that Saudi is actually alive after the events of Canto 3, which is peak. You know, we had our scuffle with the middle. That was, unironically, one of the fights I got stuck on. It took me like 8 attempts to beat Ricardo. He will kick your ass if you don't know how to handle the fight. TLDR, use Ishmael like she's a goddamn meat shield. You know, then we have the stuff with the pallid whale. How we had this whole plan to enter the whale, pierce it from the inside, grab the bow, because, you know, the previous Lobotomy Corp location kind of got vored, or something. Something like that. Which, you know, led to us meeting the P-Quad. We got to meet up with the P-Quad squad. Captain Ahab is probably one of the best antagonists we've had in Limbus. She was such a good foil to Ishmael. And you really could see that if Ishmael really did carry out her vengeance, she would not have been any different from Ahab whatsoever, which I find really cool. And after, like, fighting through the P-Quad, teaming up with Ahab temporarily to reach the whale's heart, having our showdown against the rest of the squad, ultimately culminating in Ishmael choosing to instead aim for the whale's heart instead of killing Ahab, it is cinema. Ahab lost her purpose, and then N-Corp scouted them, because of course they did. This canto is just, it's beautiful. This is really when I got sold on the story of Limbus. This right here, the evil defining, it's an S tier. I love Canto 5. I love this canto. It's pure class. Next up, Miracle in District 20. This was to build up towards Canto 6, which was Heathcliff's canto, where the general idea was that Don Quixote wanted to do something nice for Heathcliff. She wanted to get him an outfit to return to Wuthering Heights, which resulted in them basically going to a gnome factory in the outskirts that turns people's flesh into toys, and they end up getting kidnapped. Because of course they do. And they decided to go on their own because this is a Don Quixote plan. It's not a very good one. But ultimately, the sinners come to rescue the two, and they take out big-ass Santa. We meet a few people that actually live within the outskirts, such as Crayon. It was an alright intervalo. I don't think this one was anything crazy or to write home about, but it is nice. It is nice to see, because we're starting to see the sinners start to actually care for one another. They're starting to get used to one another and each other's quirks, and I think that's fun and good. There's not a lot to talk about here. I think this one will go to the top of C tier, primarily just because there's nothing crazy about the Intervalo. It's okay. The fights are nothing to write home about, but it does have some nice moments. Next up is Yield My Flesh to Claim Their Bones. Interesting Intervalo. Bamboo-hatted Kim giving a lot of people troubles, myself included. Who would have thought losing 2 sinners would cause me to struggle on this guy for about an hour and a half, to finding out more about the Blade Lineage's fight with the Kurakumo, to Dante crashing out, and we also got introduced to Angdu in this, who recently showed up in Kanto 9, because she works for the Distortion branch of the Limbus now. It's solid. It's a solid Intervalo. There's not really a lot to talk about with the story, because it is just, hey, this guy from the Blade Lineage is distorting, you need to go sort him out. We check out what's happening, and it turns out that there is a device that caused these distortions. So it's not just having a funny lady calling you up, there are also devices that are causing distortions, which we don't actually know a lot about. Maybe they're related to the monoliths in Lobotomy Corp. I don't know. This one was okay. I think I'd put Yield My Flesh to Claim Their Bones at the bottom of B. The story is fine, but it's the combat that makes up for it. Whether it be Yoon just reusing the hell out of his counter, teaching us the various rules of the backstreets, or Bamboo-hatted Kim deciding to nuke your entire team with To Claim Their Bones. Kanto 6. This is the first Kanto that I played where I was genuinely stunned after playing a portion of it. This Kanto was so good, I went out and I actually bought the Wuthering Heights book, because this Kanto was amazing. You know, it followed Heathcliff returning to Wuthering Heights, trying to prove himself to Catherine, only to find out that Catherine had already been deceased due to her big plan of wanting to annihilate every Catherine so that Heathcliffs across all mirror worlds could be happy, which culminates in there being a Heathcliff that shows up from a mirror world that wants to kill all Heathcliffs for the sake of every Catherine's happiness. It goes into the drama of the residents of Wuthering Heights as well, with Linton feeling like he was never really truly enough for Catherine, or Hindley, and him not getting a violin, which pissed him off so bad, and he hated Heathcliff that much, he decided to become an alpha. Even fucking Heathcliff himself changes so much throughout this story, even leading to distortion. Like, there's so much to this Kanto. When Heathcliff distorted, I had to go somewhere after I was recording that video, and I was stunned for like half the day. Because I was like, there's no way that just happened. The final fight against Elking as well is really cinematic, as Heathcliff is desperately trying to reach out to Catherine, ultimately ending in Catherine erasing herself and Heathcliff swearing to somehow, some way, return her back. This is the Kanto where Virgilius had to show he's not a fraud. He's only kind of a fraud. I personally, this is a spoiler for the rest of this list, I personally think Kanto 6 is the best Kanto in the game. Alright, next up, Time Killing Time. This was an interesting Intervalo. I really liked the detective theme going on with this one, with us, with us learning about T-Corp and their singularity. We had the Time Ripper, which I thought was a really cool antagonist, even though his reason for doing what he does was funny. Haha, funny car hit my brother. We were only limited to Honglu, Rodion, and Ryoshu. First half of that was hell, because my best Rodion was base. Then I got Knight of Despair, and it was easy. We saw Mercil go up on the guillotine. That part was pretty fun. I really enjoyed the Time Ripper fight. I don't know about you, but I love detective stories, and I also love, noir-inspired design, so this one hit a little different for me, I won't lie. We also got Rodion Crumbs, which is more than I can say for her Kanto. Not really much to talk about with the Intervalos, truth be told. I'm gonna put Time Killing Time at, low A tier. I think it's fun. I enjoy it. I like the Time Ripper, he's a cool distortion. And now we've got Murder on the Warp Express. This was a good Intervalo as well. wow. Pre-Canto 7 intervalos were good, because obviously, we all know W Corp. We all know about the incident that does not be talked about. So this one was us being tasked with going on a warp train to deal with a certain phenomenon that's been plaguing W Corp, which ended up being that there was a homeless bum of a blood fiend that was converting all the passengers into blood bags. We go in, we try and sort it out, and turns out Don Quixote was indeed a blood fiend. Not just a blood fiend, a second generation. So she's really fucking strong and very notable in, like, the blood fiend hierarchy. We also had some cool character building moments in this intervalo with Faust, as, you know, we see that without the Jessel shaft, she kind of clammers up, she's not really, you know, confident. So outside of the Jessel shaft, she really gets some moments to really flesh herself out, which I thought were really nice. Cassetti is... well, he was a character. I'm sorry, I think Mercil did Cassetti far better. I don't know, this one's probably like a low B tier for me, I think. I think I'd put this one above Yield My Flesh, and at least. The dream ending, Canto 7. This is going to be hot take. I'm going to warn you right now, this is a hot take. I really wasn't a big fan of the dream ending. This was one of the cantos I just really couldn't get into. And I think this is for a few reasons. I think the first reason, we were going to La Mancha Land, because the story is about us waiting for La Mancha Land, getting a bunch of fixer offices and raiding La Mancha Land. I think my first issue is that we really got nothing from that. We only really see what happens in the canto through the perspective of the sinners. We don't really get to know what it is the other teams went through and what they did to achieve the path towards, you know, the golden bow and whatever. We only see it from the perspective of our sinners. And I kind of wish there was more to it than just that. Because the only other team we really get to come across is Ji-chun's team. Which even then, we only spend like a brief period of time with them before, you know, ultimately splitting off again. I think the second reason why I wasn't that big is also because I feel like the other generation kindreds should have gotten more development. Like, we know a little bit about the barber. We don't really know a lot about the princess and the priest, do we? We know, like, small tidbits. We don't really know, you know, much about them as characters. I feel like they were underbaked for what this canto was trying to set up. And third reason, this is purely cope. Good luck fighting Dad Quixote with a burn team, because most of them are fatal to pierce damage. So I had to swap my team around, which was annoying. Call it a cope. I do not care. It was annoying. I hated it. Even though I have many criticisms of the dream ending, it's not a bad canto. There's stuff I like about it. I liked learning about, you know, the Don Quixote of La Mancha Land. I liked seeing Don and Sancho and how they correlate and how they clash with their ideas. Seeing how Don Quixote didn't even have bad intentions as an antagonist and wanted nothing but the best for humanity and blood fiends, but the way he built it up, it just fell apart. His dream ended. It's just, I feel like the pieces are there, but they're not put together correctly to form a complete piece. I think because of that, I'm probably going to put it at the top of C tier. Probably going to get murdered for this, because I know a lot of people love this canto, and you know what? That's fair. LCB Checkup is next. Originally, I thought LCB Checkup was solid. It had some really good nodes. We had the introduction of the Envy Pekatula. They're some of the most fun Pekatula fights in the game, by the way. Please give us more Envy Pekatula fights. They are great. You know, we got introduced to the GOAT himself, Hohenheim, as well as the rest of the LCE. You know, we get checked up. We get to see some of the Sinner strengths, and this intervalo is prelude the intervallo, because so much of this intervallo builds up to, like, the events of Canto 9, for example, which we'll talk about more of that later on. You know, we also, after our checkups were done, we decided, hey, let's see if we can take Don's shoes off and see if Sancho will work with us. No, she has literally taken all of the thirst from her fallen family, and now she's just a nuclear bomb. Hohenheim literally distorted himself for science. That is based. I really want to put this in A. I'm going to put it in A. I'm going to put it above Time Killing Time. It's such a good intervallo. So much build-up. And some of the unique battles you get with the different sinners as well. Like, for example, the one with Sinclair and Honglu, where you have to beat the encounter quick enough, otherwise you're going to keep getting burned. And then the Wrath Pekatula's going to deal even more damage. It's cool. I like gimmicky fights like this. I want to see more of them. They're interesting. Nocturnal Sweeping. Hype moments and aura the intervallo. This one was cool. This was the prelude to Honglu's Canto. It was a good introduction to H-Corp, you know, which is where the next Canto takes place, and we get to learn the general idea of how Hongyuan operates, with the different buildings shifting and moving. We get to learn about the actual, like, main business that goes on with Hongyuan, which is the boluses, which you can use to, so long as you have your brain intact, you can come back from death. You know, we see with Saude, she came back after the events of Canto 3 because of the boluses. And we also get headhunted by the Heisho pack, you know, the Malbranch. That's when we come across Zilu for the first time, as we're dealing with some twat from the Shi family. You know, we get introduced to a lot. There's a lot that goes on here. GQ, we have an encounter with Ricardo, so we fend off against him. Then the Shi guy was like, aha, this was actually my plan. Now you're going to get swept up by sweepers, so we have to fight through sweeper waves. It was cool. This was a cool intervallo. And it was a great build-up to the next Canto. For placement, I think I'm going to put it just below C, because C is more of my personal pick. I just loved Ishmael as a character, but Nocturnal Sweeping sets up perfectly for Canto 8. Speaking of, the Surrendered Witnessing. The second Canto that made me drop my jaw. I think you'd know with the Cuckoo Spawn. I cannot see birdwatching the same way ever again. I think what makes Canto 8 such a good Canto is how well-rounded it is. I think Canto 8 is one of the best handled Cantos in the game. I think from part 1 to part 3, it's always good, and it's always one-upping itself time and time again. We get to see Honglu's growth as he goes from believing that he should just witness it all, because no matter what he believes he can do, nothing will change, to GQ having to constantly berate him and tell him, give me an answer, you've got to fucking do something. We have so many good encounters here. Again, like I keep blabbering on about, the GQ fight, who, at the end of the Canto we find out is named Konkyu, because Confucius. Could you tell I like this character? You know, with N-Corp trying to get access to the Amnamna world, to even the Thumb trying to fight their way through, having our chance encounter with Lei Heng, to the whole events of the Hierarch evaluations. Watching Ji Chun and Honglu and Dayu and all these characters interact just really sells just how good the supporting cast is of this Canto. They're so good. And the story, enjoying life while you can and taking action rather than just being a witness, is such a powerful story. I believe this is where I would place it. I'm personally more of a fan of Canto 6, but it's not by much. The Surrendered Witnessing is such a close second for me, because of just how good it is throughout. I think the best way I would say it is the heartbreaking has higher highs, but the surrendered witnessing is the most consistently good. After this, we have our last intervallo of the video, Spring Cultivation. This one was fun! I liked the unique game mode that this intervallo introduced. The basic story is after the events of Kanto 8, we have to build up Ji-chun's skills as a hierarch because now she leads Hongyuan. You know, she heads H-Corp now. So we have 30 days to teach her how to communicate better, how to plan for the future of Hongyuan, how to become better at fighting and plan for potential assassination attempts. All this good stuff. And we tutor her, Limbus Company. Each character teaches her in different ways, you know. Ishmael plays Dungeons and Dragons, Don Quixote gives pop quizzes, Heathcliff teaches about fighting, teaches about pure offense, Faust blows herself up. It's really fun, and I also really enjoyed some of the fights in here as well. Like, you have your fight against the Psy Branch, you know, you fight Wei. He's kind of just like... He's kind of like Bamboo Hatted Kim, but like far more manageable. We even get the Night Drifter teaching Ji-chun and Sinclair, because I forget Sinclair's also a part of this, as they learn like his techniques, and he ultimately challenges Ji-chun at the end, where she's able to strike him down. And meanwhile, all this is going on, you know, we have the other H-Corp individuals trying to sabotage her, trying to make sure she doesn't get the seat because they're vying for power, but we're 2 Sigma and we don't let that happen. I really enjoyed the minigame for this, and you get a different ending cutscene depending on the points. I got the lower one because I got a skill issue. I'm going to need to go back to this at some point to see if I can get the better outcome, even though it doesn't really change anything. This will go above Hell's Chicken. This one is a good, solid intervallo with unique gameplay aspects that I hope they do for future intervallos. And now finally, to wrap this up, we have the Unsevering. Kanto 9. The most recent Kanto. I'll be honest, I'm conflicted with the Unsevering. Now, don't take this as to say I'm saying that it's bad or anything, because no, I do enjoy the Unsevering. I think it is a good Kanto. I think there is just one issue I have with the Unsevering. I feel like this Kanto tries to do too much, and so in other areas it feels underdeveloped. Like, with part 3 we had certain Sinclairs, we've had Gregor unwrapping his present and becoming a goddamn colour fixer level threat. We had Ryoshu, who was an actual concept incinerator, and all this goodness. And I feel like because we had so much going on in this Kanto, there were some things that felt underdeveloped. Like, I feel like a few of the Nurse Fathers, I'd say mainly Callisto, felt underdeveloped. But even more so, I feel like a lot of the apprentices were underdeveloped. The only real outliers, I think, would probably be Lucio, because we know he had his plan to betray Valencia, and maybe a bit of Sora. Because at least with Sora, we know, like, oh, she wanted to be praised by Ryan, you know, she's following the prescripts, she has Shin Man and Ego, which I still think is absolutely bonkers. She even survived a fight with a recently appointed colour fixer, which is crazy. Like, a lot of the characters feel like they could have had a lot more time to develop. But in other aspects, I think this Kanto was also really great. I think Ryan was a really good antagonist. Someone who was so absorbed into following the will of the prescripts that he became someone completely different. Ryoshu constantly struggling to get her adoptive daughter back in order to keep her safe, to break free from the threads that tied her to the House of Spiders. You know, we had fucking LCE as well. We had that going on. where members of them were constantly pushing themselves to the limits, dying, sacrificing everything, just to make sure that they can keep themselves afloat. Hohenheim even equipping the Big Bird Ego Gear. There's so many good moments in this Kanto. Besides that, though, I have no issues with the actual story of this Kanto. It's really good. It is a great story about parentalship and being tied to certain places, feeling like you can't escape your past. It's good. It's a good Kanto. If I were to place it anywhere, I think I might have to put it below the Outcast. I'm genuinely too much of a Gregor stan. I'm sorry. But, like, I can see this being either above or below where I've put it, depending on the individual. But even a middle-of-the-road Kanto, in my opinion, is still really good. Because Project Moon has some really great storytelling and world building. That's why I love this series. And with that, we have our list. My personal list for each and every Kanto and Intervallo as of the recording of this video. If you enjoyed the video, let me know by leaving a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy the content that I put on the channel. Turn on notifications to get notified. Tell me your opinions down below in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are my opinions irrelevant and I need to be shot? Let me know. Thanks as always for watching, and as always, take care, and fare thee wells.